And we are live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for March 19th, 2025. We are going to begin the meeting today with the election of the chair and the vice chair. Are there any nominations for chairs at this time? Councillor Caputo.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Mike Sullivan.
Do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Perfect. Any other nominations for chair? No, great. That's acclaimed. Thank you. How about for vice chair? Councillor Caputo.
I'd like to nominate Greg Martin.
That's okay. Greg's not here, or Councillor Martin's not here, but we can carry that forward if there's no other nominations at this time.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Hunt.
Okay, Councillor Hunt, do you accept the nomination? Okay. I will take a vote between Councillor Martin and Councillor Hunt, and then if Councillor Martin is the winner of the vote, then we will discuss that at the next meeting and see if he accepts the nomination. Councillor Sullivan, your vote for Councillor Martin? And Councillor Caputo? Councillor Hunt? Oh, sorry. Councillor Hunt?
For myself.
And Councillor Van Tilburg?
Councillor Hunt.
And Councillor Hunt, you are acclaimed as vice chair. So just give us a couple minutes and we will get the chair in order here and then start the meeting.
Welcome. I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Can I confirm that the roll has been taken?
Through the chair, the roll has been taken.
Okay, members, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. Members of the committee, are there any other items that for consideration that have not been already separated that you wish to separate for discussion purposes?
Just to get clarity, is 633 separated already because of the amendment?
It is.
And 636?
That one is not.
Just want to have a discussion.
Alrighty. May I please have a mover and a seconder for all items for consideration and consent items not separated for discussion purposes? Moved by Councillor Van Tilburg, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Call the vote.
The items subject to the vote are 6.3.1 finance lease policy, establish non-material lease categories for 2025, 632 quarterly reserve and reserve fund update, 634 mileage reimbursement rate for 2025, 635 fourth quarter casino update, and 637 the finance minutes from November 13th of 2024. And that carries on a recorded vote of 4-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Sullivan, Van Tilburg, Hunt, and Caputo.
Thank you. We do have a delegation this evening. So before we get into it, I would like to remind those in the meeting today that the following rules of decorum as set forth by the city's procedural bylaw apply. That no person shall display any sign, banner, or placard in the meeting room other than materials that, in the opinion of the chair, are legitimate audiovisual aids necessary in connection with any presentation being made to council. All persons present shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of any language or the making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive. All persons addressing council shall speak only on the subject in the debate and shall not speak on any other subject. No person shall applaud participants in the debate or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of this meeting. So I'd like to call Caitlin Baracher and Jeff Selman. Oh, they're coming in online.
Good afternoon. Can you hear us, Chair?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you all very much for having myself and my colleague Jeff here today to speak on behalf of John Noble Home. I'm working as a project manager representing the home, and my colleague Jeff is a professional architect providing advisory services to John Noble. If you can please go to the next slide.
We wanted to begin the discussion here to the presentation here today with an overview of the project stakeholders that have been involved in the John Noble Home redevelopment. From the owner side of things, we have the John Noble Home represented by Anna Gora, the acting administrator, and Edward Owen, the director of facilities. The committee of management is also involved as chaired by Councillor McAlpine, and the County of Brant and the City of Brantford are both participating as funding partners. The consultants on the project are G Architects, which are the prime consultant, Manticon Engineers, who are representing electrical, mechanical, structural, and civil on the project. HDR ourselves as project managers and as construction advisors to the home, and CDML, who is the commissioning agent. The contractor is BDA Construction, and they've been retained through a construction management contract where they have a handful of subcontractors working for them to realize this project. Next slide, please.
So what you can see here is a funding summary. This represents all funding source contributions to the Belcourt redevelopment project, as well as the sprinkler project since the onset. What we are here to request for consideration today is additional funding for John Noble Home with respect to Belcourt redevelopment as a 2025 funding request of $1.6 million. This would bring the total capital contributions of the project to $29.934 million. And this is inclusive of both contributions towards the sprinkler project and its completion, as well as bringing Belcourt redevelopment to completion. This total capital contribution is a combination of a commitment from both the city, yourselves, and the county, as well that represents ministry construction funding subsidy dollars that were flowed in advance to support the home in delivering the project throughout this past year, as from a cash flow perspective is required to support the ongoing invoicing and progress draws towards the project. As it stands right now, upon occupancy, the ministry construction funding subsidy will begin to flow, and these repayments back to the city and the county will begin, which is anticipated in spring 2026. Next slide, please.
To support the funding request, we wanted to highlight that there were 7 change orders due to unforeseen conditions that both impacted the critical path, pushing out the completion date, and also had a significant budget impact as well. You can see them listed here 1 through 7 with the associated impacts on the right-hand side of the slide. From the list, you can see that they relate to a variety of items, such as asbestos abatement, which was uncovered during demolition and in a number of concealed areas. There were also delays that occurred due to structural interferences uncovered at existing piers and foundations where the new building would abut the existing building, and the need to implement shoring and reinforce and make safe the existing roof structure above the chapel. These represent 7 of just over 80 approved and pending change orders on the project as of March. The revised substantial completion date due to these schedule impacts as related to the baseline schedule of April 2nd, 2025, we're extending out to January 28th, 2026. However, through negotiations with BDA, the contractor, a 2-month schedule reduction was able to be achieved, bringing the new substantial completion date to November 28th, 2025. And it's worth noting that the sprinkler project was added to the Belcourt redevelopment construction while it was already in progress. And that resulted in $700,000 roughly of cost and about 7 months to deliver the project, which will be wrapping at the end of March. Next slide, please.
This slide here represents the budget allocations that have been carried on the project. The two categories that are shown on the screen right now, the first being A, consulting services, represents all the contract costs that are required to carry the various consultants that have been used to support the project, some of which have already delivered their services and are no longer participating actively, and others, such as we've mentioned, G Architects, Manticon, ourselves, and CDML, who are going to be continuing to support the project through to completion. The second section, B, which represents all of the Belcourt redevelopment construction costs, are costs that are contracted to BDA, but they also represent costs that are in a state of flux, as in items 2 and 3. You can see approved change orders to date of 862,000, and number 3, pending change orders, which as the number represents up to March of 738,000. As change orders are approved, they move from pending to approved. As new changes are brought forward on the project, that line item for pending change orders is increased accordingly. Section C below represents the sprinkler project construction costs. It was important to communicate that $615,000 was required to deliver the sprinkler project, and that the Belcourt project supported that through the use of shared resources, including the consulting services. All existing consultants on the project also provided services to support the sprinkler project without adding incremental fees to their scope of work. If we can please go to the next slide. Thank you. Now this slide here represents miscellaneous owners costs, and the 2025 funding request that we've brought forward to you today is required for us to be able to proceed with these miscellaneous owners costs, as these are scopes of work that have not yet been contracted, and they are in the process of being finalized. Quotes have been received and vetted. They're under review. Once all quotes have been reviewed, we would be in a position to execute change orders or purchase orders in order to engage these scopes of work. However, we do require the support from the city to do so. You can see here that there is still a placeholder for contingency of just $111,000, and this is used to support any unforeseen conditions that may occur on the project as we proceed through the next phase of work. And representing as well in that lower section, we're just always trying to be very mindful of the net HST that the home is required to pay, showing that a complete budget expenditure of $0 has been achieved. Next slide, please.
Further to the table that Caitlin was sharing on the previous slide, again, here are a list of the required vendor agreements that are to be executed pending the approval of this 2025 funding request. They vary, but typically fall into the category of FF&E, which stands for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So that includes items like signage, beds, as well as nurse call and door security. The intent is that the final selection will be complete by April 1st, with orders being placed by May 1st to align with the project schedule. Next slide.
This slide represents a summary of the change orders that have been issued on the project. This expands further on those two line items that I identified, lines 2 and 3 of the budget, which represents approved and pending change orders. You can see in the vertical columns the pending amounts and approved amounts, and these are identified and categorized into 7 different categories. This is helpful to communicate to both the project participants and external stakeholders, the drivers behind the change orders, whether or not they are within the project team's control or whether they are a result of external factors. As you can see from the change orders that have been categorized, which are approximately 80 plus change orders, the majority of these changes are represented in the B and C categories, and primarily category C, which represents the unforeseen conditions. And category C is that line that we expanded on in much more detail on that delay claim activities and timeline summary, and those 7 major change drivers that both impacted the project from a schedule perspective, but you can also see here impacted the project financially. Next slide, please.
So to round out our presentation, we wanted to highlight just some of the timelines as it relates to a look forward on the project. So, you know, in 2025, here you can see a number of the ongoing activities on site for the next 3 months, which include, you know, installation of the roof structure, electrical and plumbing rough-ins, and that is to support the construction substantial completion date of November 28th, which I mentioned before. In the lead up to 2026 and just into 2026, we will be working with the ministry to submit initial and final occupancy plans, provide notification of the total completion date. The home will be conducting mock resident trials to facilitate staff training, while the completion of final commissioning of systems is ongoing. It is anticipated that the opening or admission of the first resident will occur in February of 2026. And that concludes our presentation.
Before we see if there's any questions from the committee, we're at the 10-minute mark. Does anybody want to move to extend the time so we can ask questions? Not seeing anyone? Thank you. We'll be discussing this shortly. So we have no other presentations. May I please have a mover and a seconder to put all separated items on the floor? Moved by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Van Tilburg. Call the vote. Okay. So the first thing we're sorry.
That carries unanimously on a vote of 4-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Sullivan, Van Tilburg, Hunt, and Caputo.
Now we'll move on to the delegation item first, as they were here. So do we have anybody who wants any discussion on this? Councillor Hunt.
First, I'd like to thank Caitlin and Jeff for the presentation. I want everybody to be aware, whether you're watching online, that this project is a $30 million project, or approximately $30 million project, and it's to open 40 very much needed long-term care beds in our community. And the work that's being done, while there is a need to come for additional funding, this is a very, very much needed project in our community. The sprinkler project, I know when it started, was not part of the original budget, and we're looking at a significant amount of money just for that project. And then from what you can see, the unforeseen circumstances, which is, as anybody can imagine, when you do a renovation to your house, you're not sure what you're dealing with until sometimes you open things up and you find out that things are not necessarily what you thought. So I think that's important for us to all consider those things that happen. As I said, whether you're doing a home renovation or you're building an entire addition to a long-term care home. So again, I want to thank HDR. They really have been very great to work with in terms of keeping us up to date and doing a very good job managing the project. Thanks.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fine job. Some people would ask, well, why wouldn't you know this up front about the change orders and how much they're going to be? Well, the answer is very clear that the due diligence to go through the buildings to see what the existing were constructed of required a lot more time. And the province said you only have till this date to get under the wire for your application or you don't get it. So when the province rushes you, this is the results. And when we found out that the Belcourt was being held up by the other part of the building, that wasn't any drawings that were on site before. They are now, of course, but they weren't available before. And we had to move the people for the JELA education out of that room because we had to get into that room to reattach the old building before we could take the Belcourt building down, or it would have fallen down. The chapel would have come down. It would have been a catastrophe. When we did that, we found out that the roof was reconstructed to a peak roof over a flat roof many years ago. Not any drawings that I've ever saw either, but that flat roof had asbestos in it. And asbestos requires a proper abatement process before you can move forward with anything. And that's the area where with the electrical and the mechanical stuff had to be built, which requires very structural steel cement to make that happen for 2 floors. That was very costly and delayed the project considerably. Then, of course, we got into the middle of the project was winter time, which caused other delays. It wasn't the original plan. The good news is, though, we're on track now, and the ministry is aware of all these things as we went along. Our project manager is doing an excellent job for the John Noble Home and for the city of Brantford, for the county of Brant. I'm very proud of that. And the second thing to point out is that John Noble Home has a surplus. Why do they have a surplus? They have a surplus because they use the money for frontline care that the province provides them for frontline care first, and they use the money that the city and the county give them second, which is what we should have been doing many years ago. But that's what we do now. And there's a surplus, I believe, in the neighborhood of 600,000. But I would leave it up to the treasurer to tell us how well we are on that. So this resolution asks for us to use some of that money going forward, and maybe some of our reserves that will need to be replenished for furniture going forward, capital items going forward in the future. So I think we're in good step, but better that the treasurer give a full explanation of how it's understood, because it took a while for me to understand it over the years. Thank you.
Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say thank you for the update, Councillor Carpenter. Things in there that I didn't realize were actually happening. On the report, it stated that the replenishment fund or the reserve fund for the John Noble Home was going to be sitting at 13,000. And I might be putting the cart in front of the horse here, but we are going to be discussing preliminary 2024 variance report later. I just want us to give some thought from using some of those funds to be able to replenish the fund as we move forward. Once we get that report back to us in June, I think was stated. So just wanted to state that to see if there's an opportunity for us to put some monies into that replenishment fund. Thanks.
All right, not seeing any other questions, we'll call the vote.
That carries unanimously on a vote of 4-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Sullivan, Van Tilburg, Hunt, and Caputo.
Thank you. Can we move on to 6.3.3? Councillor Caputo, you asked for this to be separated?
I did because I'd like to just put an amendment in if possible. And I guess I'd seek in a seconder.
Councillor Van Tilburg seconding it.
Perfect. Okay, so the amendment reads that item 633 be amended by adding the following to as clause B, that the honorarium received from Councillor Caputo capacity as board member on the GRCA be redirected to Central Baptist Church of Brantford. Can I speak to that if I can? Perfect.
Go ahead.
Central Baptist Church recently put in a child care center in their facility, and funded by province and city, and they've done a great job. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure was the more monies that can be funded into that facility by either members of their church and myself, or through the honorarium, are going to ensure that they can actually look at the future of reducing costs for these children that are there. They're very affordable today, but getting people back to work and giving them an option to be able to have their children looked after, children and seniors, there's the priority, everything else falls in between. So I'm hoping I get support on this. Thanks.
Councillor Carpenter.
I congratulate Councillor Caputo for doing that. When I was on the GRC, I donated mine to the Seniors Resource Center in my ward. And this is very similar, seniors and children. It's a great way to give thanks for your work on the GRCA. So thank you.
And I'll throw my 2 cents worth in as well. I'd like to congratulate Councilor Caputo also for doing this, especially in light of what we discussed yesterday with the food insecurity. I think this is just carrying the momentum in the right direction. So, not seeing anyone else, we'll call the vote.
The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 4-0. Those voting in favor, Counselor Sullivan, Van Tilburg, Hunt, and Caputo.
Now, is there any discussion as amended? Seeing none, call the vote.
That carries on a recorded vote of 4-0. Those voting in favor, Counselor Sullivan, Van Tilburg, Hunt, and Caputo.
Thank you. We have no resolutions, no notices of motions, and oh, yes, sorry, Councilor Caputo. I forgot you sneaked that one in there. Sorry, we'll move on to 6.3.6, Councilor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, I don't really have much to add or speak to. I was actually going to speak to the John Noble home in terms of replenishment. But I think seeing what's there is certainly gives a positive outlook to what we're actually saving as a city, and certainly rely on city staff to use their expertise to ensure that the funds are utilized properly. I did see, though, that we are basically down in our development charges, and being a part of a lot of developmental meetings over the past few weeks, I think we need to revisit how and what we do to try to work and expedite some of those situations, because we do have some contract developers that are looking to move forward and are willing to work with the city on ensuring that various things get done to try to be able to get those charges back up. I think Mayor Davis and hopefully all staff and council work with Grand Ridge Energy going forward as well, because we do have a lot of sites that are ready to go, but currently don't have a lot of energy processes going through them. So I think that should be our mandate moving forward as well, to try to help elevate that. So thanks. That's all I had. Not even a question.
Anyone further? Councilor Carpenter.
It's quick one to staff, then these are not final numbers until the audit's complete in June. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct. This is preliminary numbers,
Yeah.
and we will certainly come with recommendations in June when the final audited numbers are presented.
And that's when you'll decide how you're gonna balance that out, whether there's funding for John Noble Home or other agencies or whatever it needs.
Yep, that's correct.
And the 8 million is the balance after taking out the minuses and the positives, right?
That's correct. That's the net tax supported surplus. The June report will also include net surpluses and deficits for user rate supported areas as well.
Thank you.
I too would like to thank staff for the hard work they do. It doesn't go unnoticed. That said, call the vote.
That carries on a recorded vote of 4-0. Those voting in favor, Counselor Sullivan, Van Tilburg, Hunt, and Caputo.
Now we have no notice of motions, no resolutions. We are adjourned.